Okay, now we're shifting yet again to a piece called Crude Origami. This is really kind of personal essays that all circle around travel one way or another. This is the very last piece in the manuscript, and the travel in this piece is simply walking the dogs around the block. So it narrows down at the very end to the simplest domestic activity. And it's called Around the Block Again. The homeless guy on Berryman kept staring at me and the dogs and shaking his fist, but he didn't come any closer. Still, I was upset. This is one of the safest neighborhoods that Trump.com America can produce. I mean safe on both sides of the line. If you're an old white man out walking your dogs after midnight, and if you're a black kid on a jog a few miles away from home. I turned right on Bonita. The political pundit and university professor Robert Reich lives a few houses down the street in a small Mediterranean-style home with a walled-in garden and a tiny wrought iron balcony overlooking a creek. I like his thinking, his ability to explain complicated issues with clarity and passion. I also like seeing him walking around the neighborhood, dressed down in old jeans and a tattered sweater. I don't know what's going on with my own political thinking. On the one hand, I care less and less. On the other, I'm more and more angry. When we first moved to Berkeley, I was dumbfounded. How could we have landed in such a beautiful place? I shared photo after photo with my less fortunate friends, documenting the wondrous variety of homes, the lush gardens, the views of the bay, the Golden Gate, the city, Mount Tamalpais. I shared pictures of my older daughter's school with a poetry garden and a sign informing everyone that Allen Ginsberg's famous strange new cottage in Berkeley had been across the street, where a dilapidated 1970s era apartment building now stands. And I shared pictures of my younger daughter's Hilltop School, a grand English country estate looking building with views of the bay and the Golden Gate Bridge, where both Philip K. Dick and Ursula K. Le Guin had been students. I don't know why I kept hounding my friends like this. Stop it, I said. Nobody cares. Finally, after all these years, I've turned those thoughts around. Why shouldn't everybody live in a neighborhood full of quaint old homes, with good schools, great grocery stores, bookstores, libraries, record stores, restaurants, music venues, surrounded by nature protected from development, or whatever their own fantasy lists might be? As I got closer to the top of Bonita, I heard a mysterious rattling, thudding noise. I stopped and tried to locate it, to put a name on it. Then I saw the string of white party lights hanging on the deck of the house at the corner and remembered that the washer and dryer were kept outside. They were doing a late night load. And I remembered that this was the house where a young boy committed suicide almost 15 years ago. His name was Gulliver, and he was 14 years old. But I don't remember what he looked like, or if I had ever noticed him or thought about him before he died. It's a shock when someone that young dies. It must have been an accident, I always think, no matter the circumstances. When I was in 6th grade, one of my best friends, Tim Young, was running around the track for PE like the rest of us, complaining about the afternoon heat when he collapsed and died of a brain aneurysm. I've never seen ghosts or felt haunted by anything, except by the absence of Tim Young. He was a little overweight with messy hair. We were in Boy Scouts together. We rode our bikes to school. We swam in his pool and teased his little sister. His death felt like a practical joke, like he was following me around the neighborhood, hiding behind a tree or a car every time I spun around and tried to catch him. A few years after Gulliver died, his mother, Dale, started dating a man named Ed, who had miraculously been my roommate in San Francisco more than 30 years earlier. Suddenly, Ed was riding his bike up and down our street, waving hello, playing harmonica, and singing baritone ballads. He reminded me of William Saroyan riding his famous black bicycle around the streets of Fresno when I was a kid, not caring what anybody thought or whether anyone recognized him or even if he got hit by a car driven by a mostly blind grandmother or a half-stoned teenager. A few days ago, I learned that Dale had just died from some kind of cancer. I should know what kind of cancer it was, but I don't. I wish I had made more of an effort to get to know her. Once I went to the monthly sing, say, play get-together she hosted. I read some poetic prose. Everyone else sang a folk song or played a folk tune or told a folk tale. Ed and I had another roommate, Anthony, who over the years has become one of my best friends. Just today, he called from the old mining town of Bisbee, Arizona, where he settled after being forced out of the Bay Area, to say that he had finally finished the novel he had been working on and had fallen into a deep depression. He said the heat hit early this year, and even in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, the outdoor bars down the hill were blaring bad music by cut-rate cover bands playing for tourists. When I got to Dale's house, I did something I almost never do. Rather than turning left on YOLO and going home, I turned right, deciding for no reason whatsoever to make another loop around the block. This time around, the air had a sharp smell to it, like someone had been riding their brakes all the way down the hill from the rose garden. The clouds parted and the moonlight was sharp-edged and confrontational. I made it back to the Madeline school and stopped to let the puppy pee. This was almost exactly the spot where a different set of dogs, one of which had died a couple years ago and was now buried in our backyard, had ripped the leashes out of my hands and chased two possums down the sidewalk until they simply fell over dead on the grass. The dog sniffed the dead possums for a few seconds, then lost interest. I finished my walk, put the dogs inside, and hurried back up the street. The possums were gone. Not even a broken leaf of grass to mark where they had fallen. I knew they had been there, but I no longer believed what I knew to be true.